G'day and welcome to Dog Talk. I'm Dan Camilleri.
And I'm Laura McKillop. We'd like to start by thanking Enduro High Energy Food for Working Dogs with Real Kangaroo Meat for their ongoing support in bringing you our fortnightly Q&A.
Tonight we're fortunate enough to be speaking with David Mackereth. G'day David, how you going?
Good evening. How are you doing?
G'day, how's your day, mate? Busy?
Yeah, good, thanks. Yeah, busy, nice and wet.
Nice and wet.
Nice that winter's finally arrived. Yeah, getting a bit dry.
I'm not sure I like winter. It's a bit cold.
You're very privileged to have mild winters. You want to go and try a UK one for a while.
Yeah, well, we've probably got a warm winter compared to what you grew up with.
Yeah, it's nice. Yeah, it is nice. Yeah. Yeah.
So where do you call home now, David?
Now currently Yarra Valley, Victoria.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, down. We're sort of 50 minutes out of Melbourne City.
Yep.
So,
and
it's wine district. It's agricultural, historically agricultural, but it's very much wineries. It's very small scale agriculture locally, and then it was a big dairy area in the past. Yeah, it's a lush, good, nice mild winters, plenty of rainfall, and yeah, it's a good growers valley, but like a lot of other places, it's got subdivided and population sort of taken over. Yeah, it's nice. It's country with the perks of all the availabilities that you need sometimes.
yeah. And what was it that brought you across to Australia?
It was a stepping stone, really. I was heading for New Zealand, but at the time it was really difficult to get into New Zealand with the application. So I was a carpenter.
Yep.
I used my carpentry qualification to get into Australia because it was the highest, like an MVQ level 3 was the highest level of education that I had, and tried to get into New Zealand, and they didn't really need any carpenters, so it was really difficult to get in. In hindsight, if I'd applied as a shepherd, I would have probably got straight in, but I applied to the intellectual approach, and it didn't. At the time, Victoria and Queensland were given state sponsorships for carpenters, so
Wow.
Yeah, so Victoria was more suited to climate and rural. It's a little bit more like home, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so I ended up here on the basis of going to New Zealand eventually. I think the deal was you had to live and work in Victoria for 2 years as a carpenter, and then you could, then you got your citizenship and you could do what you wanted, and then obviously that opened the door for New Zealand. So.
And how long have you called Victoria home now?
I visited to activate my visa 2012. I moved out here permanently the 2nd of February 2014. So, yeah.
Wow. And did you ever make it to New Zealand?
No, I haven't got that far yet. No. Maybe never will.
Never will. Time will tell, mate. Time will tell. Yep. So you mentioned there, obviously, growing up in the UK and being a carpenter, mate. What do you want to tell us where you grew up, whereabouts in the UK you grew up, and how your passion for dogs come to be?
Yeah, so I'm from the Lake District, northwest, probably 30 minutes drive from the Scottish border. Yeah, born and raised, both sides of the family farmers. Both what you would call tenant farmers. One was a really old-fashioned sort of, you'd always be a time capsule. It was the 80s. I was an 80s baby, and so it was 80s and 90s. But it was, in comparison to a lot of the neighbours, it was like 1960, like really old-fashioned. Didn't have a quad bike or any of that. There was no. I think we only had one tractor that had in the latter years, and that would be 90s, where late 80s, 90s, mid 90s maybe, that had power steering. All the others were little Fergie tractors. So modernisation had not taken its toll at all. So but like a mixed farm, I think it was maybe 20 dairy cows at most, 25 at most. In a day where you could do a little bit of everything and make a living before everything's got sort of spoiled by commercialization. Back in the day when it was, to milk a dozen cows or 16 cows was worth having. Like, it was worth having them, but you just can't do it now. Like,
no, that's right.
You need probably 460 to make it worthwhile. So it was unspoiled. It was a little time capsule tucked away off the beaten track down a little dirt roads. It was almost, it was the 80s. It was, the influence was probably 50 years prior. It's of great quality now. I suppose it was of great quality then. You didn't know any different. But looking back now, it's like very privileged just to get that last little caption of what what's a rarity now. Damn near. It's almost a museum situation.
Yeah.
The other side of my mother's side of the family was the same. Hill farm, dairy cows predominantly. Just down the road, 10 minutes down the road.
Yeah.
So
What was it about? Obviously, you said you were going to New Zealand, but what was it that made you sort of leave the UK to come and try something new?
Oh, I did a little bit of traveling, and then I think that it was maybe the congestion of things. Home gets very crowded, and I'm very much a solitary person. So a bit more room and a bit more space, a bit more nature, and when I grew up and like being out, like there was no street lights or, it was daylight and dark, and that was what it was. There was everything's lit up now, isn't it? Like, you can't go. It's a different world, and sometimes it's not. Like, it gets a little bit unnatural, and then I suppose it gets, without like knowing now, a little bit more. In a way, it's overwhelming, and it's a way it's unnecessary. But you get away from the common factors, I suppose. But looking for more space, more rural life, more agricultural minded. The New Zealand way of life, where they do hunting competitions in schools, and it's very much an agricultural minded culture.
Country still,
because I'm hunting is my everything's about hunting for me. So hunting, fishing, freedom, big wide open spaces, clean water, clean air. Like-minded people, I suppose.
We'll touch on your hunting in a moment, but you mentioned before, like, you should have put shepherd down instead of carpenter. So obviously you did a bit of shepherding back in the UK as well.
Yeah, so I went back on. I did my trade. Like I said, my time as a trade, and then I ended up back on the land through how it came about, actually. I think it started as, well, I was always on the land with dogs anyhow, with hunting dogs for the sake of hunting. So you're always involved with agriculture, and the whole form of agriculture, of hunting, is to provide service for the bigger picture. And that's how everything in its own special way is involved and intertwined and connected. So it always sort of started with predatory management. So then you take care of you know, and then it always got back to looking after lambs and then that got back to sheep and shepherding, and obviously in full circle back to sheepdogs. Never had sheepdogs around. I always had sheepdogs on the farm, but I was always drawn to the ferrets and the terriers and the hunting side of it. So yeah, it just sort of goes full circle, and it's all the same thing in its own special way. It's not removed by any means. The problems only start when you start trying to remove it all and separate it. So yeah, that was the reason to get back to the sheepdogs. And then got a pup and helped a local farmer out that I was working for. Took an inclination to get it up and going, and just took it from there. That would be, I'd be sort of in my early 20s, I suppose, then. Mid-20s, early 20s. Had some great success with her, and then got into the interest sort of sparked into the traits that you look for in a hunting dog is the same traits that you look for in a collie. The only difference is the collie, in his marvel, has given up the end result for the sake of the person, whereas the hunting dog doesn't necessarily does that. It's for his own intention. So there was an admiration that sort of formed for that fact. That's when I sort of got started on them. So and it just kept moving forward for different reasons, different places. And at the time I was sort of working, I enjoyed getting running and getting out and about. So the physicality of it all goes hand in hand. And I've been from the hills, I was born and raised, and I'm genetically a mountain I'm from the mountains. My genes are in the mountains, in the hills, and there's nothing like a burn in your legs to remind you of who you are and where you're from. So
sleep a lot better as well.
So it's all intertwined in its own special way. I suppose I probably wouldn't have left if I appreciated it as much as I do now, but it's like anything, appreciation only occurs with the removal of something, doesn't it?
Definitely. You
don't appreciate the flicking the switch until the power goes off and it's been off for a few days. That's so it's just the way it goes. There's a lesson in everything, isn't there?
No, absolutely. So so you're hunting there as well. So you had a bit of a mixed pack back in the UK between your colleagues?
Yeah, I've had dogs from terriers, different breeds of terriers, different types of terriers. Sight hounds, running dogs, what you call them stag hounds, or we call them lurchers, different types of breeds and crossbreeds that create different outcomes, different traits. Gun dogs and retrievers, pointers, German pointer. Collie cross running dogs, Saluki cross running dogs, Bedlington collie running dogs. Lots of different psychological mixes that that give you lots of different options and lots of different traits.
All with their own individual job or idea of a scope of work that you're trying to achieve with it.
What you do is what you use just like the collies. You use so you harness a particular trait for a particular environment. So and then a particular job. If you're doing big flat paddocks, you would sort of use a Saluki greyhound, something with stamina and endurance and the drive, on the bottom end to get it done. But then if you use, small scale, use, Whippet Bedlington sort of collie sort of cross type, where a little bit more short, sharp bursts, bit more range of gears, a bit more predictive minded. Yeah, so yeah, it's a licorice all sorts of things to get, a particular end result. So yeah, that's what you pick the traits, the natural traits that you get for the habitat that you're operating in. Like you would never take a deerhound, go and Felleton. Like it's deerhound supposed to catch rabbits. Like he's supposed to stride across heather. So so you utilize the traits that you need to get the job done, to get the end result what you need. It's no different to the collies or the kelpies.
And just then did you mention Bedlington Terriers?
Bedlingtons, yeah.
Yeah, because over here, like you wouldn't actually see them for work. Like you only see them like in a show ring, I suppose, or show dogs. But cause I've actually happened to see, I had a client, or I've got a client that had a couple of them that she bred them, and bloody big teeth and very agile dogs. But yeah, people look at them here and think they're some little pretty thing, but they apparently have a bit of go in them, right?
Oh hell yeah. They're probably one of the most, like, you don't get to see them so much now because just like a lot of, or the majority of things, the intention of display undermines the reason that you have it. So when your attention is focused on the appearance is a result of it's like the cherry on the cake. The appearance is the cherry on the cake. But if you just keep picking the cherry on the cake, it undermines the fundamental reasons of why that's possible.
Yep.
So the modern day Bedlington is sort of on par with a show poodle because he's been
that's right.
The vast percentage of him has been selected for his appearance and not his ability, his psychological ability, and he's there has to back it up with his physical ability as well. So yeah, they're the most all-round tough, resilient little dog. Next to a border collie, that would be my next choice. Like if you needed something to, like if the power goes off, and you need something to do a little bit of everything and catch your supper and provide a meal for you and then still sort of defend you when the lights are off, when it's dark. Bedlington Terrier is a special little I talk about dogs now it's a caption of history. So you're not like the whole thing's described about pedigrees and knowing the 5 generations of pedigrees and what it's done on a 15-minute mentality. Whereas the whole reason that that's possible is because somewhere down the line, a certain difficult situation that had to happen created that mentality. So you're getting a little bit of a caption of history in the dog. Like it's almost like a living, well, it is a living, obviously. It's a living piece of history that has all sorts of information and all sorts of memories that have created its being, like its capability of doing what it can do. So yeah, the Bedlington Terrier is fantastic that way. Like you go down a hole and he'll, if you've got, he's from Northumberland, the same place that the Border Collie has been influential. Same country, agricultural. Catch a couple of rabbits for you to feed your supper. Catch fox in a hole that's been killing your lambs. Go ferreting with it. Track something that you've maybe shot with a bow and arrow, like going back 300, 400, 500 years. How
many of them you reckon have ended up in homes because they looked cute and nice and pretty? As opposed, and then people just like, oh, holy shit, this isn't what I thought.
Well,
because they're just taken like they haven't looked at the dog for what it is and what it was bred to do.
Well, I just Googled it and they look like a poodle.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, the modern day ones, but you just look at a picture of one that's, yeah, you probably have to go back a bit. There is certain little strains at home in the UK that are that of the old type, which are they don't have a curly coat. They've got a straight coat, a straight shaggy top coat, and then an undercoat. They've got probably 2 or 3 coats.
Yeah, righto.
But the modern day ones, they're pretty watered down. But they still hang on to certain characteristics, and they can't do anything else because it's the only reason that they're still here. Like,
yeah, I remember seeing these show lines, these client of mine, and you know, I watched, and they had a few chickens and ducks in their backyard, and I watched these dogs, and I was like, you wouldn't let them with them. And then I actually did a little bit of research, and I realized they're not the little just furry lap dog that they perceive to be just by appearance. They're pretty cool.
No, they're tenacious. They're a terrier, so they're tenacious.
Yeah.
Tenacity is yes, that is the overwhelming. Well, that is my draw to them. They're the border collie of the. There's 2 versions of the border collie in the terriers. One is the Parson, the other is the Bedlington. Yeah, they've got the most crossover points, like the border collie. Yeah, they are so adaptable and tenacious. It's that's the true quality of them is in that. But still, they might chase chickens in the wrong environment with the wrong person, but in the right environment with the right person, like they will protect those chickens from a fox. Like, so they'll adopt the nature of the person. Like if you go out and just like any working dog, if you go out and you are something, like you feed the chickens, you take care of them, you put them away at night, you give them the correct amount of discipline so they don't cross that line, and then they have the time to observe that that's what happens, they will adopt that behavior for themselves. No different to any other herding dog.
Very versatile.
Yeah, absolutely. But just like anything that is intelligent, if it's not getting stimulated in the appropriate ways, it becomes a dysfunctional lunatic.
Absolutely, those dogs keep a roof over my head. But that's a story for another day. But like when you came over to Australia, how long did it take you to get back into dogs? Or did you bring some over with you?
Yeah, I brought my terriers with me. I brought a terrier bitch with me, and I brought a collie bitch with me. Yeah. So, I don't go anywhere without a dog. I don't go I don't even drive to the supermarket without a dog.
Yeah. And you spoke earlier about your passion for hunting. How has that evolved over here?
Well, it's all I've done. Like that's sort of taken over. That's the reason I'm still here, because I got the job as a kennelman to take care of a pack of hounds, because they were in limbo, didn't have anybody, and just out of desperation, and obviously I proved that I was capable to fill the gap, to look after them, to do the husbandry side of things. They had a lot of problems going on at the same time, which has been a fantastic platform for me to observe and learn on a neutral basis, on a more passive basis, rather than sort of know what you're doing, creating certain things in certain situations, which is you can kind of get lost in that sense. So I took that over, and I think it was a 6-month husbandry thing, but after the first sort of 6 weeks they gave me a contract, and that's been renewed every year for the last 10 years, 11 years now. So yeah, it was took that over and turned the things that I thought I knew upside down and inside out, and because what it really drastically got through the message through eventually, being a bit wooden-headed. You can make big mistakes with one individual, but if you do it with 30, everything just goes to shit in an instant. And that sort of gave me the inclination to seek the balance of what management is like. So although you've got 30, you have to take care of every individual, and every individual only has to be slightly, just ever so slightly below you. So it's everything is a ladder system. So you've got you've got 30 on the scale of things, but you need to make it evident that you are at the top of the ladder, but you need to also be able to step down the ladder for every individual that needs you to step down. And you have to step down the ladder to pick the lower ones up all of the time. And that's where your work is 80% of my work with 30 in absolute freedom is stepping down and picking the lower ranking ones up. And 20% of my time is spent being a little bit more serious with the certain characters that are there just to be an example. But then I have to do that appropriately. And sometimes I have to pick them up, and so it's a constant living, evolving thing. Which puts you back into the nature of things. Like, it's always moving forward. And more often than not, just like anything, your awareness has to be in different places that you think that gets you the result. So that's one of the big factors that sort of helped me sort of move on with a lot of things, is taking care of that side of things. So yeah, that's why I'm still here. I suppose it's an overwhelming education.
And we're looking at a photo of tonight with some of your pack there, and they're all most of your pack or all of your pack foxhounds.
Yeah, I've got a pack of foxhounds of 28, 30 now. Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know which pictures it is. Yeah, there's 28. So depending on the property, sometimes I'm on foot, sometimes I'm on a horse.
Yep.
Most of the time I'm on a horse. But I do like to keep on foot because it keeps me, grounded and you need a little bit of everything, like just like anything in life. You need a little bit of. It takes ingredients to make a cake, doesn't it? And then and then just because the ingredients are there, the oven's got to be on as well, and it's got to be the right temperature. So you can't get away from those things. So yeah, most of the time it's on horse, but I do resort back to foot just to remind me of what I'm, what makes it possible. Anything that I sort of look to do with a dog is what's the fundamental reason that makes this possible. Like, training and all that sort of stuff is quite superficial. It's what's the fundamental root cause that makes all of this possible. And that's where my attention lies nowadays. In the beginning, I didn't know what I wanted. I got lucky being able to sort of half mash it together, but was never satisfied with that because there's almost an unnatural feel to it, or a discomfort. And you can kid yourself, and if you let your ego get in the way, you can keep on doing it for the wrong reasons. But this, sometimes when it gets a little bit difficult, you've got to step back and say, well, my awareness is in the wrong place. I need to shift it somewhere else.
Yeah.
So yeah, the hounds are tremendous, and they never. And what they do make it, because it's a force that you cannot override it. Like it's you can override a single dog, you can shut it down, but you can't do that with 30.
Yeah.
And if that's if your method of progress is to suppress, I would say, is the word I would use nowadays. Like, suppress is not the tool to use, because it's not natural. Yeah, you get some difficult lessons when you got 30, because it doesn't matter how many toys you throw out of the pram, it doesn't get any better. Like, but yeah, you can do it with one, but or you might be able to do it with two, but there's no chance you're going to do it with 30.
No, that's right. How do you go about sourcing your genetics? Like, I can't imagine like that would be a massive. Sorry.
Yeah, the question about.
Oh no, that was different. That was all right. But no, with your foxhounds, like I can't imagine to be a massive genetic pool here in Australia. I might be wrong, but
well, there's always that possibility, isn't there? Your wife.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, yeah, there's enough. Like, you'd be surprised. There's like my current position. They've been here for 130 years, I think. It was started off further towards Melbourne, so yeah, they've been here 130 years. There was I think there was 12 packs in Victoria originally. Now there's, I think they're down to, I don't know if it's a 5 or something. There's 2 in New South Wales. There's 1 in South Australia. There's, I think there's 2 in WA, sort of Perth, sort of south of Perth. So yeah, there's plenty of genetics around. And then now we've got, so you can get straws. So yeah, there is no limitation. Like, you're unlimited now. You don't really need a big gene pool for it. Like, you can get away a lot of years with a small gene pool. It doesn't. You don't need to. Outcross is sometimes of benefit, but sometimes of detriment.
Yeah, absolutely. And what are you looking for, like in a young, like when you have a litter of pups? What are you looking? Do you keep the whole litter? Are you looking for something particular in a pup?
Yeah, well, originally, like, if you'd asked me that question 10 years ago, I'd have said it could be a completely different answer. 5 years ago, probably a little bit of a different answer. But the beauty of what I do, I only breed 2 litters a year. I've had a couple of matings that haven't worked, so at the moment I've got a gap between. So all I'm talking about is mentality, ability, and how I access it and how I can recreate. So it's the same thing as what you're talking about as a sheepdog. But the beauty that I get is I get to keep I always keep the whole litter, and I get to see the difference. And because of the nature of what I do, I'm not directing them in the same manner that you would think that you would train in the modern way of looking at things, training a working dog. Is that beneficial to the conversation? Like, your audience is a sheepdog orientated.
Yeah,
I think it's a very mixed audience.
Yeah, it's pretty a little bit mixed these days. But in a day, like, your dogs are hunting, and we're using a predatory instinct with our sheepdogs as well, right? So yeah, that's why I just thought I'd ask the.
Yeah, so I'll give a corresponding crossover reference that makes you aware of it, that it's the same.
Yep.
So I'll resort it back to the sheepdogs, because it's all the same. The sheepdogs are hunting.
That's right.
No different to the hounds are hunting. No difference to everything is every dog on the planet is sourced from a hunting discipline.
Predator. Yeah.
Yeah, and the only physicality difference that you get on the end on the surface is because of its habitat and its type of and the nature of its work. It's only got and who's survived basically. You know, it's not been so, a lot of what is done nowadays with dogs. It's you putting the cart before the horse. It's like the dogs are at the end result of an evolution. It's you don't put the evolution before the environment. Like
Yeah.
putting the horse before the cart. So the hounds are the same way. That but the only factor is you're looking for there's certain things, just like in a border collie, that you can't influence. But then there's certain things in that you can influence and change and adapt and increase or decrease. With the hounds, you can't really do a lot. Like obedience, I don't give it. Like I don't obedience and all that sort of stuff is not a factor, because that's a result of how well you can communicate.
Yeah, your relationship. That's right.
A lot of, and I think that the language around things, for me in the dog fraternity, I rehabilitate a lot of dogs domestically. I do a few clinics, and I really like helping people. I get a lot of enjoyment out of helping people, because the fundamental underlying reason is that if you're helping somebody, you're helping yourself at the same time. And every single time that I talk to somebody in a clinic or if it's a home visit in Melbourne with somebody that's got a dysfunctional dog, that you're bringing an awareness to their own personal situation, and they have to let go of that before they can let go of what's going on with the dog. So it becomes a really interesting cycle of things. But with the hounds and the you're looking for just drive, like, and heart and intent, I suppose.
Yeah.
I'm always drawn to the ones that are a pain in the ass, like, because it really reflects itself in so many ways, that, you know, just because the difficulty is only in the misunderstanding, and the more difficult it is in the beginning is because the individual needs more information, and it's only difficult for you because you're not able to provide that information. So separate the two circumstances and figure it out sort of individually a little bit, and then come back and try again in a different environment. So, and I think a lot of that gets lost in this whole 15-minute sort of mentality of competition. So yeah, I'm drawn to the difficult hounds that are, you know, that are not perfect in the beginning. And the reason that they're not perfect is because they're so deep. They've got so much more depth to them, and they just bring everything in the kitchen sink. It's like, well, no, can you just leave the kitchen sink outside for 10 minutes, and then we'll have this conversation, and then, like, I'll show you where to put the kitchen sink, but it's certainly not in the middle of the fucking lounge. Like, I always resort back to construction and things just to give people a reference. Like, I find it fascinating about learning. Like, I don't learn on the subject of things. It's always removed. It's always in a different circumstance that gives you the realization. Like, I think it was one of the things that said, like, you can't teach anybody anything. You can only make them think. And it's the same with a dog. Like, you can't teach a dog anything that it's not already capable of. You can only make it believe that it can do it, or think it can do it. So it's all about capturing thoughts. It's not about randomly training. You know, if you're gonna walk into a situation with a border collie and you think you're gonna train it to do everything, well, if you're that good, go and buy a Labrador and teach it to do the same thing, and let's see what you've got in 12 months. Because with that mentality, your awareness is in the wrong place. And that sort of is a big milestone with
I
with a
find
lot.
myself.
Sorry.
Yeah, so I just you struck a nerve there because I find myself in when I'm doing notes on dogs that I've trained here. I use the word mentorship a lot. Dogs need mentorship and guidance, and that's what you're touching on there. Like they've already got the ability in there, but it's communicating them with them to get that out to a level that and how you want to see it done as well.
Yeah, and I would say what is like I always say what is training? Training is training is a funny word, and it really because it's a cross reference, and I think that one of the most detrimental things to people. I do, like I said, a few clinics where I get the opportunity, and it's really nice to do because you just it's helping people and helping dogs. Because I see so much with the Melbourne side of rehabilitating dogs and horses that the person is removed from they're putting the dog on a pedestal that it's not capable of being on. So the whole order of thing is upside down, and these people they really orientate their life around a dog. It's like, well, no, it's the other way around. So then you have to shift that to understand the needs of the dog, to get the best out of him. Like, and then to train anything, you need to understand what they want, or what they desire. Unless you're training something for the circus and you're just prodding it with something to get it to do a trick, you have to understand what it needs for itself. And sometimes it's if it's been removed from that sense, well, it doesn't actually know itself. It needs external information. It's like, well, how much information can you provide? And off that, I would say, off the back of that, those dogs that you're dealing with, they're just lacking information.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
And sometimes the more you romanticize it, the worse it gets. Like,
yeah. Absolutely. Actually, there's a question here that from Ryan Ackers actually ties in a bit with what we're talking about. It is back to collies, but he's asked, do you think with the influx of UK sires being used in Australia, Australian dogs at the moment, will people have to change their training methods to get the most out of them?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I would say that with a sledgehammer, like, yeah, on top of the head, like not just on the finger. Like, yes, absolutely.
Why is
that? There's lots of crossover points, but fundamentally, at the core basics of it, the methods here are too restricting. There's not enough freedom allowed in the process of forming communication, and that is just it's not an intellectual thing. It's a lost in translation thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like I said before, you can't teach anything that it isn't already capable of. So there's far too much restriction in the average or in the common. And those UK dogs, they've got a lot more to bring because, and I'm not being rude or disrespectful, that what makes the UK dogs than the British, it's the environment. They have to bring a lot more because of the complicated geographical situation. And this, and I can get it across as well as anybody because of the coming from the mountains. Like, if you need a dog to do something that will take you 50 minutes or maybe sometimes 2 hours to climb, you can't over restrict him in his foundation of his training, because if you over restrict him in the foundation of his training, you're actually creating a sense of disbelief. So if you take him into a small pen and try and shut him down and stop him in a small space, you're removing his awareness of his ability to look at the bigger picture. And if you do that, and you've only got to do it, and I always use this thing with dogs and horses and people, and with dogs in specifically, and it's a correspondence of training and how you approach things. You don't have to train a dog to sit underneath the kitchen table. How many times does a piece of food have to drop off the kitchen table before the dog learns to sit underneath it? You don't teach him to sit underneath the table and stay there. He's realized that, something might fall off this edge. I'm going to sit and wait here. I'm going to sit and wait patiently. So that's if you do something for one split second that is wrong, that will carry on into places that will infect other areas of its ability, because you've artificially removed something somewhere, like through over practice in small spaces. And then you have to get back to the bigger picture. Like, what you want in a dog is his ability to do distance, be challenged, overcome challenges, keep asking for more challenges. Like, you can't, if you take the approach of asking for less when nature never asks for less, you're going against nature. So you're going against the dog or the horse or the person or the child, because nature doesn't do that. Like, you have to find ways of saying yes, 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 more, more, more. Then you can relate to them, and they can relate to you. It's like, I would never be able to relate to a sheepdog unless I've climbed those mountains and if I don't climb a mountain and I don't make myself physically sick, well, I haven't got up it fast enough. Like, I've been dragging my feet. That's the mentality that you've got to take approach. Like, if I haven't got up a hill and I've made it as hard as possibly can, made myself sick, got to the top of it, well,
how do you appreciate the dog for trying it?
So yeah. And then once you do it, you have the belief that, I can get up that thing. If it makes me sick halfway up, well, I can still get up the second half of it. So you have to ask for more and more and more. And that's back to Ryan Akers' questions. People are going to have to change because the general approach is to ask for less. Well, you're going against the grain, aren't you? Because that's not what nature does. It doesn't ask for less. It asks for more. How much can you give? I want more. I want more. I want more. I want more. And look at.
That's interesting. Yeah, I probably never thought of it like that.
Yeah, well, and I would always say, like, I think a certain way because of corresponding references. Like, what?
Yeah.
The salmon is the pinnacle of the fish world, because he keeps swimming up the rivers.
Tastes the best too.
The tuna are the best fish because they never, they never stop swimming. Like, the drive is always it's the stimulation of the drive, and you can't. If anything that you do is debilitating to that rule of nature, well, there's a separation, and that's where it causes confusion, because that's the second that you tell them that you don't understand them entirely, because they will never want to say less. And if you find one that wants to do less, well, You don't want the damn thing anywhere near you. Like,
Are you the type of person, if unless you can give something its all and open up for what it's genetically supposed to be, you find yourself like not having it? Does that make sense?
or I don't know.
Like, does that make sense?
Not really.
Like, for example, like you got a massive pack of foxhounds there, right? But like, how many collies would you have around you now?
Immediately around me at home.
Yeah.
Normally 5. I've had 4 or 5. I've had a couple of litters over the years. I had 2 dogs. I have a wonderful friend, Ian Stringer, that you know of. I don't know if you know him personally, but yeah. So he's got some of the ones that I've sort of brought out and we've bred and we've used AIs. So, and then I've unfortunately lost 2 of my main adult dogs to circumstance, and one was an accident work, and one was I think it was a toxin somewhere. I don't think it was plant. I don't know if it was a plant or like a man-made toxin, but yeah,
Like a bait, yeah.
yeah, vets just couldn't figure it out. So I've been left with a bitch, which is a daughter of the one that I brought out, and a bitch I've just inherited, which is a tremendously well-bred bitch, an exciting bitch. Just needs to get back to being a dog, so she's in the rehabilitation sort of.
So what? 3 or 4 around you at the moment, maybe?
Yeah, 4. I've got 4.
So my question, like, you only have 3 or 4 around you, but you don't go and have like 8 or 10 around you, even though you've got some like lines that you love, because you don't think you'll give them the genetic fulfillment. I suppose is what I was asking.
Well, I'm all about the environment, and and it's regardless of what I want to achieve. I'm not into the Aussie trials. I've only got a small flock of my own sort of personal hobby sheep, little flock of South Downs. I'm just a little bit too far to and removed from the bigger sheep properties up north, so I can like do mustering jobs and things like that. So yeah, I can't provide them the environment, so they do no good.
Yeah.
So
a question: would you let all 30 dogs out of their kennels at the same time for a run?
Yes, absolutely.
Every day, or is that like what would your process be of exercising those dogs' day-to-day routine?
Depends on what we're doing. Open the door. Well, I live on 90 acres. 45 acres is open. There's adjustment cattle on there that I take care of. Then the rest of it is sort of horse paddocks with horses. So yeah, just open the door, go for a walk. It's either casual walk or it's exercising.
But 9 times out of 10, you always have all your dogs out together.
Yeah, the hounds. Yeah, definitely. And then there's certain little things that I need that. If there's little groups that need, if I put them in groups of, if there's say there's 4 that are sort of carrying on and spoiling themselves because of their ability, and they need a little bit more. Well, they need to do more miles, so I take them out and they do more miles.
Yeah.
Just like the collies, I never take a dog into train. If I want to influence a dog on a training side of things, I don't take them in any sort of training environment until they've done 5Ks.
Yeah, righto.
don't touch them. Don't touch them. Don't talk to them. They've got they obviously they want to stay with you because it's hard. That's the hard wiring of things. Just do the 5Ks. Get the 5Ks out of the way, and then we can sort of try and communicate.
That's just to get them below like a threshold, and the excitement out.
Just to get the kid out of the candy shop out of the way.
Yeah.
Depending on what they've done. Like if they've been out, and we've done some sheep work and they've done a bit of work in the day, well, yeah, we can go do a little bit. See if I can set up a situation that's going to bring an awareness, but otherwise I don't bother. It's just no.
It's funny you mention that because I think a lot of people that don't have access to work, and I see it in sheepdogs, I see it in protection sports as well, where people that don't have the room to work their dogs down, and they get them out, they train them, they put them back. They get them out, they train them, they put them back, and no different with the protection stuff. And these dogs just get stuck in this dopaminergic state of mind where they're just revved up in the head all the time.
Yep.
And as soon as they're out, they're instantly on because that's what they're being used to.
Yeah.
Like all the time.
They're just surviving, just like all of us. Like I rehabilitate a lot of horses, and just like the dogs, the better that you can do nothing, the better you can achieve anything. Like if you can't stand under a tree, in a shady tree, and chuck the reins on the horse's neck and stand there with no, and just have an off button. Like I don't even bother trying to do anything. That's my go-to place. If they don't have that go-to place, I can't give them what they want, which is off. Like, doesn't matter what I try and do, like spectacularly, it's gonna be a poor version of what is possible. If I can just ride up under the shady tree, take my feet out the stirrups, chuck the reins on their neck, and they stand there and they eat a bit of grass, and not have the desire to go anywhere, I'm not even going to try and train that horse to do anything, because I haven't got him. I haven't got him in his entirety. I haven't got the whole version of the horse. I'm not going to take a fraction of him and try and make that better, or think that I can make it better. Like I'm not that. If you think you can make another being better through
restricting it,
well, see you later. So same with the dogs. If they can't just switch off, and this is one of the wonderful things that I've realized, the best dogs need a little bit more help to switch off.
Yeah,
they've got so much to bring, but they need help to find the nothingness. Well, what creates the nothingness? Well, what makes it possible to have a sheepdog, and the possibilities of a sheepdog? Well, it's you're talking. Everybody sort of says it's like 100 years, but like sheep have been domesticated for 10,000 years. Like the sheep that we used to mess around with at home on the Herdwicks, like they've got a genetical date on them 5,500 years ago. Like, do you think the sheepdogs just turned up like 100 years ago? Well, I don't think so. Like, and that's what gets me back. Like, you're tapping into the DNA that you've got in the dog. Is if only you could light that up and have a video for every generation to say who was the man that was stood there, like who was the bloke that stood there, who was the bloke that got that pup and reared it, how did he rear it, where did he live, how did he live, what was the difficult situations that they got into and they overcame it, and then what happened. I always look at a dog like nowadays, it's always like, what happens tomorrow? Like, you get to a stage that you're really comfortable looking at what seems to be uncomfortable, because you know if you keep out of the way, what happens next is entirely on their behalf. They had a realization, they changed immediately. And we get taught stupidly through school that to learn anything you have to repeat it, and well, that only is about remembering things. Like, you don't have to revisit something over and over and over again. That's only to remember things. If you get a realization, well, that's immediate, isn't it? Like, it doesn't.
Yeah.
You don't need an education to realize something. It's like, well, okay, well, I realize that. Well, what's the next realization? So yeah, and I will not ever divert from that looking at dogs, because if you do, your awareness is in a different place that is not there, and it makes you less capable of helping that dog realize the next stage or your next stage.
You touched on it earlier when you actually said like training. What's training? And that's what we're talking about now. Like, and or to a degree, and I tell people all the time that I'm a lazy trainer, but I'm a very methodical educator, because training to me is just what you said. It's a repetition of a particular motion over and over and over again. Hopefully, you just get good at that motion. But educating is the whole bigger picture, which I think is what you're explaining there now as well.
There should be no. If you are in a situation where you're having to repeat,
You're doing something wrong.
What you're doing for a different outcome, you're done. Like, you stop. Like, stop right there. Like, because repetition is not learning. Repetition is maybe helping you remember something, but it's not about changing your awareness.
And everything learns different.
If you take that approach to your dog, to say that, and doing the same thing over and over again to try and get him to remember, well, no, he's not had a realization. Like, I go with you've got the tools that you use to create what's already there. So you don't control the individual. Like, you don't control the dog. Control and stop, as far as sheepdogs go, is the worst. Not the worst, but the most misunderstood concept that people sort of struggle with. It's like a brick wall that people, if they don't understand it, they keep running into a brick wall. And the dog does the same, because a stop for the dog when he's out of control and he doesn't understand himself is that you're actually preventing him from surviving. So never stop a young dog when he doesn't have control, because only then you get on the same page. Like, so control isn't created by being controlling. Control is created by aligning yourself with the fundamental aspects that you want to, the desire to do the same, to achieve the same outcome. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah. I
So,
do.
yeah, you go with that. So, yeah, fundamentally, and then to control it, to control something in the picture of things, you have to understand what their desire is. Like, so it's the fundamental carrot on a stick, because that's your tool. You have to be able to reward them and move that reward round to present it when they do something that you want. Like, and control has got nothing to do with that. Control is a debilitating factor that people get confused by. Like, a stop is the only two things that you need to control is the ability to leave any given situation and control the ground. So you control the geographical. If you control the ground and the ability to leave, like, you've got them in their entirety. You've got every single little grain of them. because there's nothing without. You take away the ground, you take away the ability to leave. Their ability to leave is the failure. So that's the hunting side of the mentality. If we're leaving, oh, you've done something that messed up this hunt, so we're all going hungry, aren't we?
Yeah.
So that's the nature of things. And then you control the ground, you control everything that walks on it. So that's your fundamental starting place. You have to start there. And if you don't start there, well, you'll get lots of like funny little excuses or descriptions of things that you know.
It actually takes you longer as well because you've got a lot more confusion in the relationship.
Sorry?
I said it'll take you longer as well to achieve whatever you want to because there's a lot of confusion and conflict in relationship between you and the dog.
Absolutely. And the only detriment to anything is confusion. Like the debilitating factor of anything is a state of confusion. It's not good dog, bad dog. Like it's not all of those words. Like as soon as somebody starts to describe things as good dog, bad dog, good behavior, bad behavior, it's like I just switch off because it's not. They're just trying. Like all they're doing is trying. The fact that they're trying and it doesn't suit your situation, well, that's your problem. It's
your intention. Yeah, your intentions.
It's not mine. I rehabilitate a lot of horses, and when I started riding horses, and because I needed to, 12 years ago, I looked for quiet horses. I don't want a quiet horse now. If I go and look at a horse, I want something that nobody else can deal with, because I know he can go because he's doing that is because he's got a chessboard, but he's got a chessboard, he's got drive, he's got intent, he's got something that he doesn't understand about himself, but he needs the external information to channel it into a destination or direction or an achievement. I look at the sheepdogs or the hounds and the terriers the same way. Like, I want more all of the time. So yeah, and that's when you get to know them, and that's when you get to actually know what you've got or who you've got, or
the ones with less, they're the ones that are less desirable now because you find them, you accomplish too quickly and maybe find them a bit too easy and get a bit, I don't want to use the term, but bored because they don't challenge as much. You don't feel as rewarded in yourself.
No, it's not. No, I wouldn't. I don't have an opinion on any of them. Like they all have their place. Everybody has their place. Like it's where's the environment that it's suited. Like it's not suited in my environment. But it would suit somebody else. And just on to back up that sort of situation, if I wanted to pick if I wanted just to go and do a 3-sheep trial, I would pick a completely different dog than what I want to do to go to the mountain. If I didn't have the opportunity to provide it both circumstances.
Yeah.
The only way to make it possible for me to do both would be I would never take a dog that had not spent 6 years on the mountain to go and do a 3-sheep trial, because he needs 6. If he's enough of a dog to be able to get to the last fold, so I'll put it in the context. If you get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to beat the sun and you've been on the mountain for 4 or 5 or 6 hours, and you get to the last little squeeze in the stone wall with, it doesn't matter if 400, 500, 600 sheep sometimes, doesn't even need to be that. The quantity is not relevant. The attitude in the sheep is what's relevant, because if the dogs have not been strong enough in the beginning, or they've failed and they're just a little bit sort of weaker, if they start and fold back off that little gap in the wall, they're back on the mountain.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what time you get up tomorrow, they're gone. Like, you have to have that that little bit of
grit, I suppose.
Yeah, lunatic.
Elation,
But he has to find it for himself, like just like a person does. Like, and you can't expect it to be as a 2-year-old to find its place. It takes 4 years on a mountain so they can realize that I really don't have to make life this hard. I can use that. I'm going to put that in that little place that I can get it when I need it. Like, a dog is a lot like a mind is a mind. You have to realize for yourself. You can't be told anything. You can only be, and the dog is the same. And I think, and that's why the old timers, when it started to get commercialized, the trialing thing, most of the dogs didn't turn up to a trial till they were 6-year-old. Like, they spent 4 years on the mountain.
Get a lot of real work under their belts. Get work smart.
Yeah, and training wasn't training in the context of what it is now. It's training is how I used to do it, is just put them on the ground when it's appropriate. Like, so just what made it, and the whole creation of a sheepdog is a good pair of boots, a man that will destroy you as far as walking ability, and a piece of string. So they're men that have taken care of, they're shepherds, they've taken care of sheep, they've dragged them around, they've let them off in certain situations that's appropriate, and then they've tied them up again. And they watch and they keep moving. So you've got context of shepherding. You've got, I don't know if you've been Australians, you don't know the term of hefting.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, so hefting is a way of it's a man and dog situation where you have no fences. It's open hill, like it is in a Lake District. So you've got your borderlands, Lake District, borderlands of Scotland, England, Northumberland, Wales, any mountainous areas that are still that way now, because there's no fences, because you can't fence it. It's too rough. So hefting is a method of the shepherds live up in a place with the sheepdogs, and they create an artificial boundary with the dog. So they've been hefted. So the dog works them back off a line of a.
Right.
It's generally a ridge line of a mountain, or sometimes it's a halfway face of a mountain. But it's a physical geographical boundary.
Yeah, invisible fence, but yeah.
Yeah, an invisible fence, exactly, same thing. Yeah, perfect. Yeah. So they work back off that, and then that's carried through like the Herdwicks are the best example, because of 5,500 years of history, and they still do it now. And then there is a selection that some of them get outside of it, and they get sold or changed over or cast over, but the majority of the flock sticks to those psychological boundaries, which are now. So that's the whole creation of the border collies mentality. Men that could walk the line, stay the line, live the line. Dogs that experienced service on the line, so they could pick a path, choose a path and let it go. And that's pretty much all you want in a sheepdog, is pick a path, do something or don't do something, isn't it? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
I didn't realize how special it was until I got to thinking about talking to you. I took a little, and because of my lack of ability, at the time, and my ability to sort of walk and climb, I took a little 7-month-old bitch to the boundary that I was working for the farm, and he just gave me the direction. So you walk down the lake. It's like 5 kilometers down the edge of the lake. You get to the boulder stone, which is a massive stone, and then you climb. I know now he was taking the piss because he didn't think I'd be able to do it. So we get to the boulder stone. It's Wasdale Lake. It's a really horrible. It's beautiful, but it's horrible. You get to the big stone, and then you have to climb up. And there's little sparse bits of heather and bits of grass you're looking for sheep. Maybe you might get 1 an acre or 2 an acre. Like it's very, very sparsely populated with sheep, because you just can't hold that many because of the terrain.
Yeah.
So in the ignorance of doing it, we did it a couple of times, and we just kept, all we could do was, because of my limited handling or my limited communication with her, was just put little packets of sheep, and you get sheep trods, like paths, just like you get paths with horses in paddocks.
Yeah, like pads. Yeah.
It doesn't matter how many dogs or how many sheep or cows or horses you've got. Somewhere in that paddock there'll be a little narrow path that they all walk.
Yeah.
So they all fall into line, and that's what you get on the fells. At some point they'll all drop onto the sheep trods, the paths they follow. So all you can do is pick up the sheep that you can find, put them on those little tracks, and then send them back down to the farm that they're going on.
Yeah.
So that's all you can do. So you stick to the boundary, you pick up packets of sheep, you put them down, put them on the trods, and and they will eventually keep going, and then you drop back, and then you can send the dog back around the bunch, and then you've got a flock off. So you create a flock off maybe 3 hours of just putting 2s and 3s together.
Yeah.
But that dog, after I left that place when I came to Australia, that little bitch did that a few times with different areas of the farm with no fencing. She did that for the rest of her life, and she would go from the farm, and she wouldn't be spoken to or seen for 2 hours. Like each gather would be 2 hours, and all she'd done was replicate what we did.
Yeah.
A couple of times, but it was obviously deeply ingrained with her, with the fundamentals of her, and her ability and her hard wiring. But yeah, she was never spoken to for 2 hours, and it's this real. Well, obviously, it's a shame that it was a time ago that we didn't have drones, and nowadays you could sit back and watch it, but
it'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, but that's the whole reason that it happened, and that's the whole reason that anybody's got a border collie. It's because of the men that could walk those boundaries, and stick to the boundaries that the sheep stick to this day. Like they still stick to those things today.
Creatures of habit.
Yeah, it's a habit. It's an awareness of like the dog doesn't have to always be there, but if he turns up every now and again, we'll just keep away from him.
Yeah.
And I think that's a fantastic perception of things, that like you don't always have to be there. Just if your consciousness is there, well, you're there, aren't you? So
Yeah,
absolutely. Oh, that's cool.
But yeah, give me a big picture on why things are possible. Like, yeah, it's all right to send them left and send them right and do the small scale things, but it's because their ability to map an area revisit it and just make that their life. Like, and they don't want to be spoken to. Like I always said to people, like you teach a dog at command to be able to not use it. Like if you're using it over and over and over again, well, you haven't really
haven't educated them that great, or allowed them to be educated.
Yeah, well, yeah, you haven't like. Well, you haven't. Well, you haven't. Yeah, well, yeah, you haven't sort of been a bystander as much as what you could be. Like, so yeah, you do that. You know, that has to be a mentality that like you teach something to do something, so you don't need to do it anymore. Like, then it can adopt it and do it for itself. Like,
yeah.
So yeah.
Really like the way you've approached things. Oh, you approach things, but the message you got out today as well about, you know, communicating with animals more effectively and letting them be as well.
What realization is.
Yeah. Yeah, no, really appreciate that message that you put out today for us, mate, this evening.
Yeah, well, you know, somewhere along the line, you have to get comfortable with things that are uncomfortable, and then see the bigger lesson. And the part, I would suppose the power in the message is like everybody controls the environment, so you have absolute power to control the environment. You don't need to control the individual. Just give it the environment that it needs to flourish. Like plant the seed and don't chase the tree to grow up faster than it needs to do. Like it's the big reason. Like you don't do that. Like
no, absolutely. Thank you very much for your time tonight, mate. I really appreciate the chat and the insight.
It's been great.
I'd love it. I can just get you thinking deeper. But I know you're very busy, mate. So no, thanks for putting some time aside for us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, not a problem anytime. And if anybody wants any help or if they're in Australia or anywhere, anybody that wants any help or needs anything to sort of help them move forward, I'm very open to sort of to doing that. Like very accessible. I'm very reclusive in certain ways, but I'm very accessible in in helping the bigger picture. So
no,
thank you.
Thank you, mate. Appreciate it.
Spot on. Okay, thank you very much.
All right. And to everyone that's listening tonight, thanks for tuning in. And please remember, we learn every day, and the day we stop learning from each other will be a sad one.
Thanks.
Have a great evening.